Welcome to Fantasy Football Hub. Today I'm joined by the big man Bakar to preview the upcoming double game week 36. There are a few contentious decisions which, in my opinion, I think are going to go down to the wire. Bakar, first of all, mate, how are you doing? And give us a little insight. How are you thinking? Your decisions, are they made, or are you waiting for news?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jack. Hello, and welcome to all the listeners and viewers. They're made in my head, but I haven't made any transfers yet. So I'm waiting till the last possible moment before making my transfers. I think I'll wait till tomorrow, to be honest, for the early Newcastle team league, which is very, very relevant to the transfers that we make.
Yeah, I mean, that seems completely sensible. Let's have a quick look back at your team from last week. A very low scoring week overall. So despite scoring 35 points, you did get a red arrow, but it really wasn't too bad.
It was a low scoring week for everyone. I mean, I was more or less on par with the average before the Brighton game happened, where I had Estupinan and I didn't own McAllister. I had March, he got benched, and then of course McAllister scored, and he has been hurting my rank in the previous couple of weeks, and that's one of the reasons why I've slightly dropped in rank over the couple of weeks. But it's all right. I mean, it's just a small small fall in rank, so I'm okay with it, and hopefully with 2 free transfers this week, I can consolidate in my position.
Right, I think we should get straight into your team and your thoughts this week, because you have the 2 free transfers. I want to know pretty much immediately what you're thinking with them. Let's first of all talk about March, because he is the obvious one that I suppose needs to go. You know, he's got that hamstring injury, may well be out for the season. It looks likely. What are you thinking there?
I think McAllister is the obvious one that jumps out. I own Matoma. If I didn't have Matoma, I would have gone Matoma, but obviously I have him. So McAllister is the one I want to go for, simply because Brighton have 5 games in 3 weeks. And yes, I know they have a tight schedule, but this is the first time they've had like a 5-6 day rest in a while, because they've had the Monday Sunday turnaround this week. So hopefully McAllister should start at least 4 of the next 5. That's what I'm thinking. And when you look at the other options, they're nowhere close in terms of minutes. He's going to get an extra game at the very least. And considering his price point, I think he's the best option. I'm not too worried about the fixtures. I keep hearing that Brighton have a tough double. I don't really buy that, because Brighton, even against the top sides, occasionally beat them on XG. And even when you look at their away stats, they're second for mins per XG, big chances, goals. And I just rate them very highly as from an attacking point of view. And McAllister, even let's say, even if he plays in a deeper position with penalties, obviously now that it's a double game week, 2 back-to-back double game weeks coming up, the chances of penalties increase. So I want to pick him because he will continue to tick along. I'm not that bothered about him playing deeper as well. I mean, there's every chance he can drop into the number 10 role as well, with Gilmore playing and possibly Welton back as well. So I think this is a bit of an obvious one when it comes to this. If I had a City midfielder or an Arsenal midfielder, I would have possibly benched March, but I think it's worth rolling the dice given how my midfield looks.
Okay. Yeah, it's a funny one with McAllister. It's the kind of, I remember I was speaking before where we were worried that he was playing deeper, but you get that penalty, then you realise, a little bit of luck, that the jammy goal off his head or whatever it was, and that's kind of how it goes, isn't it?
Exactly. He isn't the most sexy pick on paper, but it's just the fact that he will continue to take along, and when he's getting so many minutes, there's a chance of him getting points. And his numbers have been really good as well. When you look at his numbers post restart, he's one of the best midfielders when it comes to XGI. Even since game week 31 onwards, he's top for shots after Haaland. So it's not as if he's not he doesn't have goal threat. He does have goal threat even from a deeper position to a certain extent. He does have goal threat. He does have a good shot on him. And, there's every possibility that even if he starts in a deeper position, he can move to the number 10 role, like he did against Everton after the substitutions were made. So yeah, I just think I'm going to play that probability.
Okay. So that's quite a simple move for your team. What if you had March, but you also had McAllister and Mitoma, so you didn't have a Estupinan or another Brighton defender? What would you do then?
Yeah, I think I'd probably look to go to an Arsenal mid, actually, because their fixtures over the next 3 weeks are really, really good.
Wow.
Brighton at home this week, then Forest and Wolves at the end of the season. I think all three of them, Odegaard, Saka, Martinelli, all three are very good picks. And depending on whoever you can afford, I think all three of them are good picks. Let's say you can't get to any of them and you have to pick, let's say, a 5.5 million pick, then I'd probably look at either Newcastle mid or even Pascal Gross. I think Pascal Gross is a good shout. He's fourth for expected assists post the World Cup. And again, I just highlighted how good Brighton are away from home, and he does often tend to get a piece of the pie as well.
Okay. Now, with these Brighton mids, because they have 4 games in the next 2 weeks, do you think it's worth perhaps taking a hit to get one of them in because of those extra doubles over someone else? Like, say budget is a little bit tight and you don't have enough to go from a March to a McAllister. Is it worth a hit to do that?
I think this is very much squad dependent because there are a lot of teams which have benching dilemmas in game week 36 and 37. So I assume for the significant majority of teams, the hit is probably not worth it because you have perfectly good single game weekers on the bench, or even like in most instances, people are benching a Brighton defender this week. So I think the hit is slightly questionable. But let's say you don't have good enough squad depth. In that case, I'd probably take the hit just because of the number of fixtures they have left remaining.
Okay, so that is your first transfer. Now I want to know what you're thinking with your second one. I can see 2 Newcastle players, but there's a lack of a forward in there. Is that going to be the solution?
It will be, and it's a tricky one because as much as I'm a stats man and I want to pick Callum Wilson because his goal threat is far superior to Isak, I'm not entirely sure of his minutes in the double.
Okay.
I mean, I don't rate Isak's goal threat on the left as highly as some of the other FPL managers do. In fact, since game week 29, when both of them have played, Isak on the left has not even accumulated even 0.5 xG in any of the fixtures after game week 29, while Wilson has had over 0.5 xG in 3 of the games. So he's clearly the central chance hogger, poacher on penalties in that team. So if both are starting, Wilson is the better pick. But the problem is that I'm not entirely sure whether he will start 2 games. And obviously in that position, I would rather go with the player who has the higher expected minutes, which I believe is Isak. I was actually studying the fan forums as well, reading up on Newcastle, and almost every other predicted lineup had Isak in it. While Wilson was 50-50. Some had him starting, some had Isak with Saint-Maximin on the left starting. So I think the Isak is the safer pick. Long story short, and another pertinent point which I'd like to raise here is the fact that now that we're making 2 transfers, most managers are making 2 transfers this week, selling the Brighton mid-March. There is a possibility that you might want the Newcastle forward, which you buy in game week 37 or even game week 38 as well.
Yeah.
Right. So in that scenario, when you look at the next 3 fixtures, I think Isak has the higher probability of playing at least 2 of them. Just is the way I look at it.
Yeah. I was going to say exactly that now because of the lack of other options in the team. You wouldn't really want to be benching that player against Leicester at home. So yeah, it's not just 2 fixtures, it's 3 now as well. And yeah, of course, Chelsea final day with nothing to play for. Anything could happen there as well, I've got to say.
Yeah.
According
he could even get 3 starts as well. I mean, he could even get 3 starts as well.
Yeah, of course.
Given that it's a Saturday, Thursday, Monday turnaround, that's a fairly comfortable turnaround.
Yeah. According to the Fantasy Football Hub My Team tool, Isak for the rest of the season is predicted to score over 2 more points than Wilson. You'd expect that a lot of that comes down to predicted minutes and how much they're expected to play. Is there a way of really knowing how much someone's going to play? Like, do you factor in Eddie Howe's comments even this morning about they can play as a 2, they can play as a 3, the Longstaff news, that sort of stuff?
I think given the Longstaff injury and given the fact that he's just experimented with it, I think it is likely that both of them will play together. I think it's very simple. If you're chasing rank, I think Wilson is a very good pick for chasers this week because there's not much to split them.
Yeah.
And whether or not Wilson starts the next two fixtures after this is very much performance dependent. I mean, let's say he gets a brace, he's not going to drop him for the Brighton game. Then obviously he's going to start. In that case, those who opt for him will be laughing. So I think for chasers, it's a very good move to make for upside. But for those who are looking to consolidate rank or looking to play safely or looking to build on a lead in a milli league, I think Isak is the safer play.
One final question on Newcastle forwards and goals potential in those two games. Talk to me about your thoughts for those two games, the doubles, and just how you see them going in general, because a lot of who we go for may well depend on how you see those games going. For example, the Leeds game doesn't go too well. If you think it's low scoring, Wilson could be dropped. What are you thinking there for both those games?
I think Newcastle will concede in both games.
Okay.
But I think they will score heavily as well. I think they'll score at least 2 goals in both of those fixtures. But I expect them to concede as well. So basically, I expect those games to be high scoring. I say that because I've just said Brighton are an attack I rate very, very highly. They almost always beat the elite teams, even on XG. And away from home, Newcastle's defense is slightly susceptible. I don't think they're as good as they are at home. So, and it's a must-win fixture for Leeds. I mean, I'm sure when Big Sam got the job, this is one of the fixtures after City he had earmarked as one which he'd want a result from. And given their position, they'd have no other option. So, I think given what's at stake, Leeds will probably be more attacking than their approach at City, and they'll probably score.
Okay, so that leads to the big meta question of what are the best 3 Newcastle players in terms of structure? If you could, would you go for the double attack? Could you even go for a triple defense if you wanted to be completely outlandish? Like, what are you thinking there?
I mean, if I was picking 3 players this week, I'd probably go Isak, Wilson, and Trippier for the reasons I've mentioned. But it's not as straightforward as that because a lot of us have double Newcastle defense already.
Yeah.
And in that case, I don't think it's worth switching around. Let's say I don't think it's worth switching one of the defenders to get an attacker and use 2 free transfers to change that structure, because you're not entirely sure whether that Newcastle forward will start all 3 fixtures. And B, because we already have a benching headache in game week 36 and 37, in 37 as well. Yeah. So, I mean, there is every possibility that you're making that transfer just for this week alone rather than for game week 37 as well. So I think the only scenario where I can possibly see the double structural move paying off is if, let's say, if you want to captain Newcastle forward, you don't own him. And then you change structure just so that you can get the opportunity to captain him. Let's say you don't have Wilson starting, Isak is benched. I know it's a remote possibility, but let's say it happens. Then you can possibly go with Wilson along with the Isak that you already have, because you obviously would want to captain Wilson in that case. Okay,
so yeah, a lot of it is, of course, team dependent. All right, then. Let's talk about one more player on your team, which it's been interesting, I'd say, over the past 10 game weeks. Bruno Fernandes. The fixtures again look brilliant. Obviously, he's got that double coming up in 37, but the points just haven't been there. What are your thoughts on him?
I'm very comfortable holding on to him. I mean, I've been adamant that he will come good in recent times. He hasn't really justified his underlying data in recent times, and he's just been very unlucky. I mean, when you look at his XGI, his XGI is almost around 7.5 over the past 6-7 games. Over the past 8 games, but he's still massively underperforming. You look at his big chances created, he's created 6 from his previous 6 big chances created, he's had just 1 assist. I mean, he's providing chances to his teammates, but they aren't taking him. I mean, what more can the guy do? I mean, there's every possibility that had those chances been converted, we wouldn't even have been having this
Oh,
conversation because his
100%.
numbers are actually
100%.
so good. His numbers have
Yeah.
been so good. He could have easily had 4 to 5 more assists given how well he's been playing. And I think those who don't own him should make a plan to get him in game week 37. If not this week, I mean, let's say if you have Isak, if you don't have March and you don't have any other transfers to make, I think buying Fernandez this week is a very good move because United, after ages, would have had a week's rest. And Wolves are generally poor away from home. And Lopetegui even said that he will rotate in the last few fixtures because Wolves practically have nothing to play for.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think United will do well.
Okay, then. Now, final question in this episode. I do want to stick on 36. Is the benching dilemmas. You've already talked about it. It's not really, in your opinion, necessarily worth taking a hit to get a player in to just bench another one with an amazing single game week. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But Luke Shaw's on the bench. Trent versus Estupinian. I mean, I'm just going off what I'm seeing here on the My Team tool. Trent is predicted to score 5.4 points. And for that reason, he is ahead of both Shaw and Estupinian, who are both predicted about 4.5. Do you agree with that? And are you doing that?
I don't necessarily agree with that, but I'm going with Trent simply because of his higher ceiling. I mean, the guy has returned in every single game after game week 30. He has 7 big chances created in his previous 6 starts. What more do you want? I know Liverpool's defense isn't as great, and I expect them to concede against Leicester because away from home their numbers are terrible. But I expect Brighton to concede in both games as well because away from home Brighton have had just 2 clean sheets all season as well, and they concede around 1.34 xG on average away from home. Just given how high Trent's ceiling is, I'm gonna treat him more or less like an outfielder, and he's playing against the Leicester side who've just shipped 5 to Fulham, and
Yeah.
Liverpool have plenty of motivation as well. I mean, they're coming on the back of 6 wins, and I mean they do have Champions League hopes still alive. So I'm gonna go with Trent. There's also the fact that Leicester are actually very weak at set pieces, and Trent is on set pieces, so that's another weakness for Trent to target.
This feels like it could have Hall potential, despite the fact that it's only one game, of course. Just the eye test from Trent last few weeks as well, playing. Of course, he's not super advanced. Like, just because he's in midfield doesn't mean he's bombing on and making second man runs and getting in the box and stuff. But he's having shots near the box. He's still involved, on a lot of set pieces, as you said. To me, it does feel like Hall potential. Sure, then not really in your thoughts at all.
I expect United to clean against Wolves. I mean, I don't rate Wolves away from home, but again, I think he's going to play as a centre back, and the ceiling will be limited. So I'm just playing the guy with the higher ceiling. I think Shaw will get 6 points. I'll be honest.
It's a great gaming where you're expecting your bench to get points, but I guess that does show that the stage of the season we're at, right?
About it. I mean, I knew what I was signing up for.
Yeah, of course. Speaking of sign-ups, guys, if you do want to have a go, the Car's enjoyed that plug, so let's go for it. If you want to have a go at putting your own team into the tool that you've been seeing the entire video, it's on every single video. Please do get in the description. The link is there to use the Fantasy Football Hub My Team tool. Bakar, thank you very much as always. Some good advice there. It's going to go down to the wire. Your final team reveal will be up at what time? When do you think?
I'll post it tonight on Fantasy Football Hub, but I'll do the transfers tomorrow. I'll obviously reveal what my final thoughts are, and obviously I'll reveal what I'll do in each of the scenarios depending on whatever happens in the Newcastle team leagues.
It's definitely one of those where I think it's pretty wise, I'd say, to have your plans already made, like Bakar will, and then just when you get the team leaks tomorrow, if there are any, there may well not be, but you also plan for every sort of stipulation and thing that could happen. Okay, Bakar, thank you very much, and guys, we will see you on the next game week for another preview. Good luck with this one. I'm praying for not too much variance.